Hi, my name is Dominique Davis, and I'm going to be presenting my older adult oral video presentation with you all. The stage that I decided to hone in on it with my interviewee was the stage 6, which is Erickson's stage 6, which is intimacy and isolation ages 18 to 40 years. In this stage, Erickson describes that it has more prevalence of self-recognition. So learning more about yourself, coming into your identity, and then wanting to share that with others or to expand that to others, either by, marriage and partnership, continuing to strengthen and commit to bonds, um, or even just, changing or having a career path that would um, further your identity and your exploration and things like that. Committed relationships are more desirable and also make more sense because it is older adult. You're not a youth or adolescent anymore. And that's just is typically something that we see around that stage. So for my interviewee, she definitely went through a lot of huge things in her life. She spends a lot of time here, so she went on with a lot of huge things. But the first thing that was really big for her is that her first husband, while there was love there, he wasn't very supportive of her and her dreams. She did want to change careers at one point after already committing to college and other things, to becoming a teacher, and he wasn't really supportive of that. Of course, there was some bias there with education. It doesn't pay enough, all the things that go with that. And then also her epiphany and just kind of understanding her depression and her personal mental illness and kind of accepting that it doesn't necessarily have to be triggered by anything specific. People sometimes just have depression because of chemical imbalances. So really learning and understanding that about herself and then taking the extra step to seek help and therapy and even medication from time to time. And then eventually making the decision to actually commit to going to school and becoming a teacher, all while being a mother and co-parenting with her previous spouse, because this also led to the dissolval of her previous marriage and even finding love in another scenario. She also wanted to become a teacher mainly because she wanted to create better experiences for her students, the better experience that she had that she remembered in her formative years of just being not pleasant, not feeling supported, not feeling understood, and feeling largely ignored and that she didn't belong. Some things that were completely, like, definitely affected her was absolutely, as I said before, just not having a supportive marriage initially. Um, we typically like to get married and have people support you and be there with you and, support your dreams and aspirations, even if they don't seem to be something that that person likes. Um, and that definitely kept her from following her dreams initially. So that's why there was some delay before she decided to actually commit and go back to school to become a teacher. She did manage to divorce him and move on and find other love. Um, she was able to move on and find love, and she was actually able to successfully complete college and become a teacher. However, in her first year of teaching, her second husband became terminally ill, so that absolutely was a huge loss for her. So working through that and becoming a teacher and being a teacher and finally following her dreams, but also, still having to continue being a mother and a teacher and a spouse and deal with that absolutely hard. Um, but she did still managed to accomplish that. So even in spite of having doing all of that, it was incredibly inspiring to hear that even in spite of losing her second husband who supported her through everything in comparison to having her first husband who didn't, and then being able to still successfully complete a first year of teaching was phenomenal. Um, she did move on to marry her third husband, who actually turned out to also be a loving and caring partner that she's still with to this day. So conquering love and loss and moving on and continuing to teach and do the things that she loves and inspire students um, and give them a different perspective on their education, absolutely phenomenal. Um, So one of her biggest psychosocial crises was definitely starting a new career, especially as a later adult. So as she explained that, she did go to college the first time and had a completely different career from teaching and decided to go back to school and of course played around with other career options as well. Initially she was considering being like a lawyer. But having to go back to school, not as a 18, 19, 20-year-old, but as a almost 40-year-old woman, 40 plus year old woman, with kids or kids. No, actually, I misspoke. She was definitely in her late 30s with kids, and not even like little kids like infants, but like school age children. And then also maintaining a job and being able to get through school. Um, and then also still having that continuous grief of a spouse. Um, Having a spouse and a partner that was able to encourage her and support her through that even before he passed away, definitely instrumental into her resolution to follow her dreams and to do things and affect things differently, and then going on to still be able to find another husband that was just as fabulous. Um, yes, yeah. Uh, Another thing that was super challenging was her depression and her struggle with depression. It is kind of off-putting sometimes when there are people who have depression and it doesn't seem to be triggered by anything. Well, why are you sad? It doesn't make sense. Nothing's going on. Um, and that's kind of a reasonable thought typically, but people who have depression don't always have something going on. It's just a chemical imbalance. Um, So that in combination with losing her spouse and, the stresses of everything that was going on with her first year absolutely could have triggered an episode. Um, and then just, like I said, the idea of being an older adult, not even like a young adult or even mid-20s or early 30s, but being an adult with, a mortgage and a car note and kids and a job and this great husband, and then kind of grieving your husband and then having the bouts of depression, there were a number of things that were in combination that were supportive of her, but those were definitely some things that could have hindered her. Um, she did indicate in youth also that she felt dumb, as she said, and that she did not like school because of it. She also had an unstable school setting, so she moved around a lot. So she went to a lot of different schools every year, so she didn't really have that stability or that sense of belonging that a lot of kids like to have when they're in school. Um, she felt like her teachers made her feel less than. She said that she felt dumb, and when she revealed this to her parents, they were just kind of awestruck, like, "You're not dumb, you're not less than. I didn't know you were having such a hard time with school." Um, this did have her carry over to having low self-esteem in her first college run, but when she went to college, she realized that she was a phenomenal, phenomenal woman. But lack of educational stability, moving around from school to school, and teachers not being as supportive, understanding, or sensitive, or making her want to pursue teaching. And it encouraged her to want to pursue teaching so that she can be a teacher that is different from the ones that she had. Be supportive, be understanding, be sensitive. Um, um, then also just again taking the leap to go back to school. I feel like I related to that a lot because me personally, I am back in school now after a 6 year hiatus, and then to know that she did that maybe 15 years after a hiatus, and then having children and all the other things, I can absolutely relate. But just kind of being in a classroom with kids that are like closer to your kids' age than your own age, I could understand how that's a little bit overwhelming, but she definitely did it. She did have familiar support. Uh, Her educational confidence or lack thereof definitely started with her not having school. She didn't have a supportive first husband, and her family was incredibly supportive also, and kind of like helping her manage her feelings of what she wanted to do and giving her that support system that she needed. Another theory that I thought was interesting was Kohlberg's theory of moral development, and that's mostly because she honed in on a lot of the decisions that she made in adulthood in this stage were based off of experiences that she had as a child that she didn't want other children to have. So that kind of moral plane and just kind of being able to relate that to her life now so that she can give kids a better perspective now, and that being something that she truly wanted to do in spite of the stigma associated with teaching. Um, So, but Kohlberg's theory definitely assessed that development of the more complex takes shape in childhood. So, feeling that being unsupported and having unsupported by teachers, insensitive teachers, um, was not a good feeling. So that kind of reward punishment system was mostly punishment, and then also not knowing why the punishment exists because she wasn't a dumb student, as she says so casually. But yes, Kohlberg assessed that it does take shape in childhood, specifically with a reward punishment system. Um, and then, I can relate that to how my interviewee felt, just like constantly feeling berated by teachers and not supported or feeling like she's being heard. There is limits though, just because, with any theory there's limits, but with this one specifically, it is based heavily on cognitive ability. And as we know, ability can change and varies from person to person for a number of different things. You can have great cognitive ability in youth, and then when you get older, it can deteriorate. But it just kind of varies, and everyone's circumstances are different to their cognitive ability. Um, so that's part of it and a good limited. Feelings, for example, with my interviewee, she felt stupid and unworthy. And then when she got older to kind of be able to reflect and understand it wasn't stupid and unworthy. She was responding to, her environment and how her teachers made her feel. And then just kind of wanting to mimic that and understanding that that's not okay and that's not good and that's not the best thing ever. And then wanting to change that and influence and be the change in the world. And here are my references. Um, as you can see, and that concludes my presentation.